today's gratuitous food shot is my favourite local chashu man. Hi guys, today I want to talk to you about my Kamidana. I'll talk about it in context, things like why it is where it is, when I do a video about this room as a whole. But since I have quite a lot to say about what a Kamidana is and don't want that future video to stretch out too long, I thought a standalone video now would be a good idea. Okay, so what is a Kamidana?
Kamidana, meaning god shelf, is a way for adherents of Japanese religion Shinto to worship at home. Essentially, they're a place to house o-fuda, which are paper blessings or charms from Shinto priests. It's said that this tradition of writing down blessings in a kind of talisman form was started by the priests of the Ise Grand Shrine, or Ise Jingu, in Mie. Having been given these sacred pieces of paper, people needed respectful places to keep them. And as a result, during the Edo period, the idea of the Kamidana came about. The shelf itself is not actually called the Kamidana, it's called the Tanaita. And though I do have one in my house, my Japanese friends explaining to me what it is being the spark that made me want to get a Kamidana in the first place. It's too small for all the objects I want to display, so instead I'm using this space above the cupboard beside my tokonoma, which is actually not a particularly rare place to have Kamidana. Now I actually got all of this rather beautiful stuff from an old couple who were trying to get rid of it as they downsized. That's how I get a lot of my traditional stuff, I have to say. They only wanted 100 yen for everything and the assurance that I would take good care of it. There are different traditions and expectations revolving around what can be done with Kamidana, whether it's right to sell them second-hand, but there's certainly a market for it. On the other hand, strict practitioners might insist that it's quite disrespectful to sell your household shrine, but it's not as though the old couple's motives were mercenary, you know. And given that I'm not a Shinto practitioner, but just wanted to admire the beauty of it, it seemed like a good arrangement. I should probably mention here that in common with many East Asian countries, Japan has quite a relaxed attitude to religion. In that, it's widely seen as acceptable for people to follow a little bit of religion A here, a little bit of religion B there, and just generally have a sense of holy things being holy no matter what religion they're from. Anyway, being done with the bulk of the renovations in this room now, it was time to put the Kamidana back up, after giving it a little bit of a clean, of course. The first thing I put back into place was the shimena. Shimena are these ropes made of rice straw, the same thing that tatami are traditionally made of, and they denote a sacred space. That said, because they're nice to look at, you'll also see them in non-holy places, like here at the entrance to this restaurant. They're probably, I'd say, the most immediately recognizable symbol of Shintoism, especially when accompanied by these shide, which are just folded strips of paper. The word shide apparently comes from shidesu, meaning a signifier, and together with the shimena, they signify what is sacred ground. I'm attaching the shimena to this piece of wood, which I think is called the unpan. As far as I know, there's no special significance to this piece of wood, it just suggests a stage with curtains. Previously it was at the top of my original Kamidana, and I quite liked it, so I moved it here. As part of the renovations, I ran an electrical socket up there so that I can plug in my little electric lanterns, but also so that I can run these little USB fans, which will hopefully keep the whole space relatively dust-free. Next, I started arranging the actual parts of my Kamidana. Although there are numerous rules one should really follow, from everything I've read, Shinto priests are really quite permissive about what you do with your Kamidana, and a bit of personal expression is actually encouraged, which is quite surprising in Japan, where generally people are very much encouraged to do things in one particular way, which is perceived as the right way. Just ask anyone who's ever practiced kendo and has had to learn how exactly to fold up and tie their clothes after they've finished practicing. Though some people are of course serious enough to spend vast amounts of money. Look at this one for almost 10 million yen. That's about 90,000 US dollars. And as such, I've generally just followed how the old couple had set things up, although as I later learned, there's some quirkiness to what they decided to do. So for example, this impressive central miyagata, or model shrine. Once a miyagata, a model shrine, is placed on the tanaita, the shelf, those together make the Kamidana. So this particular Miyagata is what they call a sanshazukuri, a triple shrine. So this one little building has 3 doors, and there are certain rules you can follow as to what you place in each of those doors. But because I also have 2 other ishazukuri, or one-door shrines, as separate buildings, I'm told I should also treat this sanshazukuri as an ishazukuri. So in other words, I should treat my 3-door shrine as if it's a 1-door shrine, and then what would go in the 2 other doors actually go in the 2 other buildings. So that's a little unorthodox, but hey, I think it looks really nice. In the center I place this kagami, although more specifically it can be called a shinkyo, a small mirror that symbolizes the gods, and in particular Amaterasu, who we'll come back to in a little bit. This is the only part that I bought separately. The old couple didn't have a mirror like this set up, but I think it looks really nice, and it's a kind of focal point in the middle there. Now in the shrine on the right, you're supposed to put talismans or paper blessings from Ujigami Jinja. This is an important shrine in the south part of Kyoto, and when I received this Miyagata, inside I found these effigies of 2 of the Shichifukujin, or 7 gods of fortune. There's Ebis, the god of wealth and of fishermen, holding a big fish and his fishing rod, and then Daikokuten, who's generally shown holding a big bag of rice and a little magic mallet. I'm not sure if these come from the Ujigami Jinja, they're not really the gods associated with that shrine, but hey, they're pretty cute and I'm not about to just get rid of them, so this is where they stay. And then the final ishazukuri, or one-doored Miyagata, one-doored model shrine, is supposed to be for o-fuda paper talismans that mean something particular to you or from your favoured local shrine. Now again, I'm not a practicing Shintoist, and I guess things become just slightly complicated because the only one I feel any kind of special connection to is actually Amaterasu. Amaterasu or Mikami is the sun goddess in Shintoism and one of the 3 most important figures in the religion, the Sankishi, the 3 precious children they call them, and she is the goddess venerated in the Ise Grand Shrine, so that central place is already devoted to her. Personally, I have a really positive memory of when I was in Okinawa. I was on this tiny little island called Iheyajima, and as one of the things you can do there, you climb up this small mountain and then you squeeze into this cave, and inside there's this shrine to Amaterasu, which I may not have captured very effectively on film, but was a really kind of uplifting experience on that trip. So I have some o-fuda, which I think are also dedicated to Amaterasu, here in this little mini shrine building. Next come the little offerings, which you can put on a little kind of offertory tray called a sanbo, but I don't have one of them. But either way, these offerings should be made on these very particularly shaped little white ceramic containers, which I think look really nice. All the offerings kind of represent the essentials of life, and the most important of these is rice, which you can see me supplying here from my not particularly sacred My Melody cup from Sanrio Puro Land. Next comes water, which should be put into this cute, pleasantly shaped little vessel, which reminds me of the enga on the top of stone lanterns. Last comes salt, and you'll notice all of these 3 offerings are often used in purification rituals. These offerings should really be changed as often as possible, but I must admit, again not being a practicing Shintoist, I don't really bother all that much. Next, because things get very fiddly when there are too many things up on the shelf, I set up the little electric lanterns. These generally just get called toro or lanterns, but sometimes I hear them called tomyo, which means like a sacred light. I think that more properly refers to when they used to have actual live flame in this position though. Next comes sakaki branches. Now more devout adherents generally use the real thing, especially because this is an evergreen tree, so it's not that difficult to get the branches, but I suspect the vast majority of people are like me and use fake plastic versions. While they may not be real branches though, it's amazing how a bit of greenery livens up this little scene. Finally, even though as an offering it's supposed to be second only to rice, I put up these little ceramic vases which are meant to hold sake, or rice wine. Evidently the gods the old couple enshrined here liked their sake because they sent me no less than 7 of these vases. And okay, that's my Kamidana set up. There are plenty of other things you can put into a Kamidana if you want to. You can give it a nice curtain, you can put Inari fox statues in there. It's quite popular to give offerings of mochi, or to put in an arrow, a hamaya, which is an arrow for destroying demons. For me though, this is enough, and I couldn't be happier with how my Kamidana turned out.
And that's all I have to say about that. See you guys again next time. Bye bye!